It's Monday, the 29th of July, 2024. Welcome to the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 stories, 5 minutes, let's go. Story number 1, it is a massive week for the economy, with official inflation data set to determine whether interest rates rise again.
As most other developed economies lower rates or talk about lowering rates, the Reserve Bank is thinking about lifting them. If the consumer price index and underlying inflation figures come in above 4% annualised, there'll be pressure on the local central bank to hike the official rate to keep prices in check. However, plenty of talk at the moment about the risks of tipping Australia into a recession if the Reserve Bank changes interest rates. The issue, economists warn, is households continue to struggle with rising cost of living pressures, and higher interest rates could tip them over the edge. A new report by Deloitte Access Economics, very respected, argues that if it weren't for the federal government stage 3 tax cuts, we'd already be in a recession. Now, the Bureau of Statistics publishes the inflation figures on Wednesday. The Reserve Bank Board meets next week. That's when we find out what's going on. At the moment, we have the official cash rate at 4.35%, a 12-year high. Deloitte said more benign inflation figures would allow the bank to keep rates steady and keep Australia on the narrow path of low unemployment and economic recovery. Let's hope it happens. Certainly Federal Treasurer Jim Chalmers hopes so. He more or less said that yesterday, saying there's a bunch of factors involved in the Reserve Bank's decision. Maybe, but inflation is definitely the most important one.
Yeah, it sure is. And Wednesday's data is so important. It will no doubt impact the share market as well, just as we head into earnings season.
That's right. Rio Tinto kicks things off on Wednesday. The market's been pretty volatile over the past fortnight or so. It hit a record high, then fell sharply, though it did rise again on Friday. While what's happening to interest rates is the backdrop, earnings season will force investors to take a closer look at the fundamentals of different companies. The one they look at most closely are anything to do with interest rates, consumer discretionary stocks, the banks, property. It's going to be fun, Michael.
It certainly will. Okay, story number 2. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has reshuffled his front bench, with Tony Burke being the winner, taking on the Home Affairs portfolio, while Claire O'Neill, who had that job, will now look after housing and homelessness.
Mr Burke, who is Employment and Workplace Relations Minister, will also take on Immigration and Multicultural Affairs. They had been held by Andrew Giles. He now gets skills and training, though that's no longer in the Cabinet. Mr Burke remains leader in the House. Senator Murray Watt will become the next Employment and Workplace Relations Minister. Housing and Homelessness Minister Julie Collins will become Minister for Fisheries and Forestry. And Minister for Small Business, Senator Malarndirri McCarthy, will replace outgoing Indigenous Australians Minister Lindy Burney. Basically, Pat Conroy will also come in to the Cabinet as Defence Minister. The winners, Pat Conroy and Tony Burke. The losers are Andrew Giles, particularly, and Claire O'Neill.
Story number 3, Rupert Murdoch is locked in a secret legal battle against 3 of his children over the future of the family's media empire as he moves to preserve it as a conservative political force after his death, according to a sealed court document obtained by the New York Times.
Incredible story in the New York Times. The 93-year-old Mr Murdoch late last year made a surprise move to change the terms of the Murdoch's irrevocable family trust to ensure that his eldest son and chosen successor, Lachlan, remains in charge of his collection of television networks and newspapers. The trust currently hands control of the family business to all 4 children. But Mr Murdoch's arguing in court that only by empowering Lachlan to run the company without interference from his more politically moderate siblings can he preserve its conservative editorial bent and thus protect its commercial value for all his heirs. Last month, the Nevada Probate Commissioner found that Mr Murdoch could amend the trust if he's able to show he's acting in good faith and for the sole benefit of heirs. A trial to determine whether Mr Murdoch is in fact acting in good faith is expected to start in September. It basically pits the father, Rupert, against the 3 siblings, James, Elizabeth and Prudence. Incredible story.
How about this one, Sean? Story number 4, all those Aldi shoppers, me included, hoping for an online version soon, are going to be a little bit disappointed because the German-based supermarket chain has abandoned plans to go digital, even as Woolies and Coles are both pushing even more into that space.
Yeah, Aldi's only been in Australia since 2000. It's funny to think it hasn't been here that long. It's got market share of 10.5%. It's been looking at moving into online, but Jordan Lack, Aldi Managing Director of Buying, told the Fin Review that after serious consideration, the retailer dismantled its online team late last year. He said in the current environment, amid a cost of living crisis, customers want value over convenience. Now, with price playing a bigger role, the cost of an online store would force prices up. That's not what Aldi wants, or at least that's not its strategy. The group's now considering new products, most recently launching Aldi Insurance. It's also targeting growth corridors on the outskirts of major cities and growing sales at its existing 570 stores.
Last one, story number 5. Customers who buy second-hand clothes at op shops would earn carbon credits under one of the first privately generated trading schemes to be considered for adoption by federal regulators.
The idea comes from a guy called Kane Blackman, who's the boss of Good Semi Enterprises. He reckons governments should offer financial incentives to people who recycle and reuse clothes in a bid to curb the greenhouse gas emissions generated by the import of new garments and textiles. According to a report in the Fin, the proposal is one of 43 ideas now being assessed under the Albanese government's plan for private citizens, corporations and charities to play a bigger role in determining eligibility for Australian carbon credit unions. The Clean Energy Regulator has devised 31 different methods for earning those credit units over the past decade, but the government wants to look further afield. It's using crowdsourcing to come up with some new ideas.
All right, there we go. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Monday, the 29th of July, 2024. Remember to hit follow on the podcast. If 5 minutes isn't enough, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed. Wherever you listen to podcasts, that comes with a bunch of interviews and things today. Today's interview was with Brian Hand from Morningstar, where he goes through his most overvalued and undervalued stocks. It's a great one for investors. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.